I didn't turn back because I was brave. I turned back because if I didn't, I would lose them twice. The fire was already running when Jed Mercer swung his horse around. Wind shoved flame across the ridge like it had a purpose. And there, at the edge of it, stood a woman with a baby pressed to her chest, smoke in her hair, boots sinking in ash. He cut through heat and noise and brought them out alive, thinking only of distance and breath and the next step. By morning, the town would call it charity. By Sunday, they would call it debt. By winter's end, paper would be laid on a church table, ink waiting, and a child would be used like leverage. Jed would stand between a crowd and a mother, not raising his voice, not drawing a gun. Choosing right when wrong would have been easier. And the truth, once spoken, would burn hotter than the fire ever did. But before anyone noticed, the seal on that paper sat just a little too far to the left. Stay with this story to the very end. Subscribe for more Western love tales. And tell me, what city are you watching from? He turned the horse back before the thought finished forming. The fire had already crossed the draw. Wind shoved it low and fast, a living thing, sparks snapping like teeth. Jed Mercer rode straight into the smoke, one hand over his mouth, the other tight on the reins. The mare hesitated. He did not. Ash fell like dirty snow. A beam cracked somewhere to the left. He heard a sound that wasn't fire. A baby. He slid off the saddle and ran. Boots burned through the crusted ground. Heat slapped his face. He tore the door open with his shoulder and dropped to his knees. The room was a box of flame. At the far wall, a woman crouched low, her back to him, arms locked around a small bundle. She did not scream. She did not look up. She rocked once like a prayer said too late. "Ma'am," he said, and his voice came out rough. "I've got you." She shook her head without turning. "Go." The baby cried again, thin, already hoarse. Jed crossed the room in 3 steps, wrapped his coat around the child first, then the woman's shoulders. He cut the rope that had fallen across her boots. The blade slipped. He cut again. The ceiling groaned. He grabbed the woman under the arms and hauled. She stumbled, knees buckling, and he lifted her clear. The heat followed them out the door like a hand on the spine. He ran until the smoke thinned and the ground turned wet underfoot. Only then did he stop. She slid down the bank and sat hard, clutching the baby against her chest. Her hands shook so badly the cloth rattled. Jed knelt in front of her and checked the child's face. Soot smeared the cheeks. The breath came fast, but it came. "Is she—" The woman swallowed. "Is she—" "She's breathing," he said. "Keep her tight." The woman nodded once and did not thank him. He stood and looked back. The cabin was gone. The fire took the last beam and folded it inward, neat as a book closing. Jed turned away before the sound finished. "I have been too late before." He lifted the woman without asking and carried her to the horse. She did not fight him. She did not look at him. When he set her on the saddle, she flinched at the leather like it might bite. "What's your name?" he asked. She did not answer. "Mine's Mercer," he said. "Jed." The baby whimpered. Jed adjusted the coat again, careful with his hands. He mounted and took the reins slow, keeping the mare's head down. They rode through smoke and falling ash, the wind at their backs. By the time the road showed, The sky had gone the color of rust. Ash Creek lay ahead, low and gray. People stood along the street with wet sacks and buckets, watching the fire crawl the ridge. When Jed rode in, heads turned. Someone muttered. Someone else crossed themselves. He swung down and helped the woman off the saddle. Her boots left black prints on the planks. She swayed. Jed steadied her with 2 fingers at the elbow and stepped back. "Doctor," he said to no one in particular. Dr. Miriam Kent came out of the office with her sleeves already rolled. She took one look at the baby and reached out. The woman pulled the child closer. "Please," the doctor said, gentle but firm. "Let me see her." Jed met the woman's eyes for the first time. They were dark and bright with fever. He kept his voice even. "Ma'am, she needs hands that aren't shaking." The woman looked down at the bundle, her jaw set. She handed the baby over and folded in on herself, arms wrapped tight around nothing. Dr. Kent carried the child inside. Jed followed until a man stepped into his path. "Sheriff?" Jed said. Amos Vance's hat sat low. His eyes flicked from Jed to the woman on the step and back again. "Where'd you pick them up?" "From the fire." "Any papers?" Jed stared at him. "There was a door and a roof. That's what there was." The sheriff's mouth tightened. "Name?" The woman did not answer. She pressed her forehead to the post and breathed through her teeth. Jed took one step forward. "She's hurt." "So are a lot of folks," Vance said. "Town's full." Jed didn't raise his voice. "The child goes first." Vance looked past him into the office. The baby cried again, louder now. Dr. Kent's voice rose, calm and quick. The sheriff shifted his weight. "All right," he said. "For now." Jed stood aside. The woman slid down to sit on the step. Marta Soto appeared with a towel and a heel of bread. She set them near the woman's knee without a word and went back inside. The woman took the towel and wiped her hands. She did not eat. Jed leaned against the rail and waited. Smoke thinned. Bells rang somewhere up the road, one slow, then another. Christmas was a week off. The sound cut through him anyway. Dr. Kent came out. "She'll live," she said, "if the fever breaks." The woman's shoulders sagged. She put a hand to her mouth and made a small sound that might have been a prayer. "Can you walk?" Jed asked her. She nodded. "I can." "Where were you headed?" She shook her head. "Nowhere." Jed looked down the street. Men were watching, some with worry, some with calculation. He knew the looks. He had worn them once. "My place is north," he said. "Blackbird Ridge. You can stay until the road clears." Her eyes snapped up. "I can work." "I didn't ask you to," he said. She stared at him, suspicion sharpening the fear. "Nothing's free." Jed held her gaze and let the silence sit. "The door isn't locked." She looked toward the office. The baby cried, then quieted. Dr. Kent's voice murmured low, steady. The woman closed her eyes and nodded once. They rode out as the light failed. Snow flurried in the smoke, thin and early. Jed kept the pace slow. When the mare stumbled, he spoke to her soft. The woman clutched the saddle horn with one hand and the baby with the other. She did not lean into him. At the ridge, Jed dismounted and opened the gate. The ranch lay dark, a line of lanterns winking near the barn. He swung down and took the baby when the woman hesitated. The child was lighter than he expected. He set the baby by the stove and knelt to stir the coals. The woman watched him like a hawk watches a trap. "Water," she said. "Please." He brought it. She drank and handed the cup back without thanks. He did not mind. Jed laid a blanket out and placed the baby in the crook of it, turning her the right way so her airway stayed clear. The woman's breath caught. She knelt beside him and pulled the blanket up. "What's her name?" he asked. "Rosie," she said. "Elena Reyes." "Miss Reyes," he said. She flinched at the formality, then nodded. Outside, the wind shifted. Inside, the stove ticked and settled. Jed stepped back and left space between them. He stood by the door and bowed his head for a moment, the old words coming without effort. The woman watched him. When he finished, she whispered, "Amen." Jed opened the door to check the night. Snow stuck to his boots. He did not know then how far the fire would reach, or how many lies would follow it into town. He only knew he would not leave again. He closed the door softly. Morning came thin and gray, the kind that crept instead of arrived. Jed was already up. He split kindling by the barn, each strike measured, breath steady. Snow dusted the rails and melted where it touched his sleeves. Inside, the stove popped. Elena Reyes sat on the floor with her back to the wall, Rosie pressed to her chest. The baby's breath fluttered like a sparrow's wing. Elena counted it without moving her lips. Jed set a pan on the stove and poured water. He did not ask if she was hungry. He set the cup within reach and stepped away. "Thank you," she said, quiet. She did not look up. "Ma'am," he answered, and went back out. By the time the sun showed its edge, a rider came up the drive. Dr. Miriam Kent dismounted with her bag already open. She took one look at Rosie and went to her knees. "Let me," she said. Elena hesitated. Jed stood where he was, hands empty, eyes on the floor. Elena shifted and gave the baby over. Dr. Kent listened, frowned, then smiled once. "She's strong," she said. "Fever's still there, but it's not winning." Elena's shoulders sagged. She pressed her fingers together until the shaking stopped. "Keep her warm," the doctor said. "Skin to skin when you can. No drafts." Jed nodded. "I'll see to it." Dr. Kent glanced at him. "I know you will." They heard the horse before they saw him. Sheriff Amos Vance rode through the gate slow, hat brim low, eyes already measuring. He dismounted without greeting. "Morning," he said. "Sheriff," Jed said. Vance's gaze moved to Elena. "Name?" She held Rosie tighter. "Elena Reyes." "From where?" "Nowhere," she said. Vance's mouth twitched. "Everybody's from somewhere." Jed stepped between them, not touching, just present. "The child's sick." "I see," Vance said. "Town's got rules." Dr. Kent stood. "Town's got sense, too." Vance's eyes flicked to her. "Doctor." "Sheriff." A silence settled. It carried weight. "I'll need to know how you came by them," Vance said to Jed. Jed met his eyes. "I turned back." Vance waited for more. Jed did not give it. "Any papers?" Vance asked again. There wasn't time, Jed said. There was fire. Vance looked past him at the house, the stove smoke, the blanket on the floor. People will talk. They do anyway, Dr. Kent said. Vance exhaled through his nose. You're taking responsibility? Jed answered without pause. Yes. Elena looked up then. I didn't ask. Jed held up a hand, not toward her, toward the sheriff. For the child. Vance tipped his hat back a fraction. For now, he said again, like a stamp he could lift later. He mounted and rode off without looking back. Dr. Kent let out a breath. He's counting, she said. On what? Elena asked. On fear, the doctor said. She packed her bag and stood. I'll come back tonight. After she left, Jed brought a basin and warmed water. He knelt and cleaned soot from Elena's hands without comment. She stiffened at first, then let him. He did not linger. I can work, she said. I didn't ask you to, he said. I don't take charity. He folded the cloth. It isn't. She watched his face, searching for the hook. There wasn't one she could see. That made it worse. He set bread and a little honey on the table and stepped back again. Eat. She did. Later, he saddled a horse and rode into Ash Creek. The street was awake now, voices low, eyes sharp. Marta Soto stood in her doorway, arms crossed. She all right? Marta asked. She will be, Jed said. Marta nodded once. People are saying things. They will, Jed said. Inside the mercantile, a man leaned close and spoke without lowering his voice. He brought a woman home from the fire. No husband. Jed paid for coffee and turned away. At the doctor's office, Dr. Kent looked up from her ledger. Jed set coins on the counter. For medicine, he said. She pushed them back. I've got it. Take them, he said. She studied his face, then the coins. She took them and wrote something small in the margin. I will, she said. On the way out, he passed Deputy Nolan Pike. The younger man shifted, uncertain. Sheriff's asking questions, Nolan said. About what? Jed asked. About land, Nolan said, and stopped there. Jed rode home under a sky that threatened more snow. At the gate, he paused. He did not know why. He went in anyway. Elena sat where he had left her. Rosie slept. Elena's eyes followed him, wary. Doctor'll be back, he said. She nodded. That afternoon, the wind turned. Smoke came low again, the smell of it clinging. Elena's breath shortened. Jed saw it and opened the back door, letting clean air move through. I should go, she said suddenly, before I cause trouble. He did not answer right away. He split another stick, slow. The road's not safe. I've walked worse. He set the axe down. You don't owe me. Her jaw tightened. Everybody says that. He looked at her then. I mean it. She looked away. As dusk fell, lanterns were lit in Ash Creek. A knock came at the door. Jed opened it to Silas Crow. Crow smiled with his mouth and not his eyes. Evening, he said. Heard you had guests. Jed did not invite him in. You heard wrong. Crow's gaze slid past him, took in the stove, the blanket, the woman on the floor. Looks right to me. Elena stood, lifting Rosie. She did not step back. Crow tipped his hat. "Ma'am." She said nothing. "Town's going to want things settled," Crow said. "Papers. Debts." Jed's voice stayed level. "There's a child." "There's always something," Crow said. "I'll be back." He left as he came, boots clean, smile intact. After he was gone, Elena's hands shook again. Jed fetched another blanket and placed it around Rosie without touching Elena. He backed away. "He owns things," she said. "People." "He doesn't own you," Jed said. She laughed once, short. "They all say that." Outside, the first carol drifted up from town, thin and hopeful. Jed bowed his head, the words familiar, the season pressing close. "I asked for strength once. This is what it looks like." Dr. Kent returned after dark. She checked Rosie and nodded. "Better," she said. Elena closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, to no one in particular. When the doctor left, Jed banked the fire. He stood by the door again, leaving space. "Good night, Miss Reyes," he said. "Good night, Mr. Mercer," she answered. The snow began in earnest. Jed watched it for a long moment before closing the door. He did not know then how tight the town's net had already drawn. He only knew the child's breathing was steady, and for this night, that was enough. The night held. Snow laid itself careful along the fence rails, quieting the world. Inside the house, the stove burned low and steady. Rosie slept with her mouth open, breath soft, the blanket rising and falling like a tide that knew where to stop. Elena Reyes did not sleep. She sat with her back against the wall, knees drawn up, one hand resting on the baby's chest, as if the dark might try again. Each creak of the boards pulled her eyes open wider. Each gust of wind felt like a knock that had learned patience. Jed Mercer moved before dawn. He did not speak when he rose. He pulled on his coat, eased the door open, and stepped into the cold. The latch did not catch. He left it that way. Outside, he checked the stock, his hands sure, his thoughts not. He salted the mare's feed and brushed the snow from her back. The sky lightened by degrees, pale as milk. When he came back in, Elena was still awake. She watched him from the floor, measuring. He set bread and a cup near her and stepped away. "You don't have to keep doing that," she said. "I do," he said simply. She frowned. "Why?" He poured water, waited for it to warm. "Because it needs doing." She took the cup, her fingers grazed his. She pulled back at once. The day settled into a rhythm that did not ask permission. Jed mended a rail by the south pasture. Elena kept Rosie warm and counted breaths. When the baby cried, Elena rocked once and whispered words that sounded like a hymn she'd learned crooked. At noon, Jed brought in a chair and set it near the stove. "You'll be more comfortable." She did not sit in it until he had gone back out. By afternoon, the wind shifted again. Smoke rode low, the smell clinging to clothes and hair. Elena's shoulders drew tight. "I should leave," she said when Jed came in, "before people come looking." He leaned the axe against the wall. "The gate's open." She stared at him. "That's not what I meant." "I know," he said. Silence filled the space between them, not empty, just waiting. I can work, she said again. Cooking, cleaning, anything. He shook his head once. You don't owe me labor. Her voice sharpened. Everybody owes. Jed met her eyes and held them. Not here. She looked past him at the door. The latch still hadn't caught. He saw the thought land. He did not reach for it. Late afternoon brought another rider. Marta Soto came through the gate with a basket tucked under her arm. She did not dismount until Jed waved her in. Soup, Marta said, for the baby, and you. Elena took it with both hands. Thank you. Marta's gaze flicked to Jed, then back. Town's restless, she said. Fire makes people mean. I know, Jed said. Marta hesitated. Sheriff's been asking. About what? Elena asked. About land, Marta said, and left it there. After Marta rode off, Jed went to the back room and came out with a quilt folded neat. He laid it beside Rosie, careful not to brush Elena's arm. My wife made it, he said, and then wished he hadn't. Elena's eyes softened and darkened at once. I'm sorry. He nodded. That was all. I didn't think it would hurt this way again. Dusk came early. Jed lit the lantern and set it where the light fell wide. Elena watched the flame, hypnotized. You pray? She asked, sudden. Yes, he said. She swallowed. Me too. When I remember how. He bowed his head, not asking her to join. The words came old and steady, a rope he knew how to hold. When he finished, Elena whispered amen again, the sound barely there. They ate in quiet. The soup warmed Elena's hands. Rosie slept through it. A knock came after dark. Jed stood. Stay here. He opened the door and found Deputy Nolan Pike shifting his weight in the snow. Evening, Nolan said. Sheriff sent me. Jed waited. He wants names, Nolan said. Dates. Where she's from. Jed's jaw tightened. The child's sick. Nolan nodded. I know. Then tell him that. Nolan hesitated. Silas Crow's been by. I saw him. Nolan looked at the latch, the open gate beyond. Be careful, he said, and left. Jed closed the door and leaned his forehead against it for a moment. He straightened before Elena could see. He's not done, she said. No, Jed agreed. That night, Rosie woke coughing. Elena's hands went clumsy with fear. Jed crossed the room and took the baby without asking, turning her, patting her back the way Dr. Kent had shown him. The cough broke. Rosie cried, then settled. Elena covered her mouth. Tears slipped through her fingers. Jed handed the baby back. He did not keep her. You know how, Elena said. He shrugged. I was taught. By whom, she did not ask. Near midnight, snow fell harder. The wind found the cracks. Jed moved the chair closer to the stove and set another blanket around Elena's shoulders. She stiffened, then let it stay. Thank you, she said. Ma'am, he answered. Morning came clean. The smoke had thinned. Ash Creek lay quiet below the ridge. Dr. Kent arrived just after sunrise. She listened, nodded, smiled again. Fever's breaking, she said. Elena sagged into the chair, the fight easing out of her all at once. Jed went to the barn and returned with milk warmed just right. He fed Rosie slow, patient. Elena watched his hands. "Who paid for the medicine?" she asked suddenly. He did not look up. "The doctor handled it." She studied his face. "She said someone came by before." He finished and set the cup down. "Did she?" "Yes." He met her eyes. The truth sat there, quiet. "I don't want to owe you," Elena said. "You don't," he said. "That's not what I meant." "I know." The air held again, thick with unsaid things. A wagon rolled past the gate and did not stop. Voices carried up the drive. Elena's shoulders tensed. "You can leave," Jed said. "Or you can stay. The door isn't locked." She looked at Rosie, then at the door, then back at him. "I'll stay," she said. "For now." Jed nodded once. "For now." Outside, bells rang in Ash Creek. Practice for Sunday, for Christmas coming close. The sound climbed the hill, thin but sure. I didn't plan to build anything. I just didn't shut the gate. Jed went back to his work. Elena sat by the stove, Rosie warm against her chest. The latch stayed loose. Snow softened by noon, turning to a damp hush that settled over Blackbird Ridge. The smoke smell lingered anyway. It clung to coats and hair and the back of the throat, like a memory that refused to leave when asked. Elena Reyes sat at the table this time. The chair creaked under her weight, unfamiliar with being used in daylight. Rosie lay wrapped beside her, one small fist knotted into the blanket. Elena kept one finger resting against the baby's ribs, counting. Jed Mercer worked the counter with a cloth, slow circles, nothing wasted. He did not look at her unless she spoke. Dr. Miriam Kent arrived without knocking. She stamped the snow from her boots and crossed straight to the baby. "How's she been?" the doctor asked. "Breathing steady," Elena said. "No cough since night." Dr. Kent listened, then smiled. "Good girl," she murmured to Rosie. "Both of you." Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Dr. Kent washed her hands and turned to Jed. "I'll need to check the burn on her arm." Elena stiffened. "It's fine." "It isn't," Dr. Kent said gently. "And neither is pride." Elena rolled her sleeve back. The skin beneath was red and blistered, angry where ash had kissed it too long. Dr. Kent cleaned it, wrapped it, firm and sure. "Try not to use that arm," she said. "I can't not," Elena said. Dr. Kent's eyes flicked to Jed, then back. "You can try." She closed her bag and paused. "I meant to tell you," she said, as if remembering something small. "The medicine." Elena's head lifted. "What about it?" Dr. Kent hesitated. Jed set the cloth down. "Someone came by before you rode in," the doctor said. "Paid for it. Cash." Elena looked at Jed. He did not look back. "Who?" Elena asked. Dr. Kent met Jed's eyes this time. He didn't give his name. Elena stood. The chair scraped. "You did." Jed's jaw worked once. "It was handled." Her voice sharpened. "By you." "I said it was handled." "I didn't ask you to do that," she said. "I know," he said. The words fell between them, heavier than they sounded. Dr. Kent cleared her throat. "I'll come again tomorrow." She paused at the door. Keep the baby warm. After she left, the house felt smaller. Elena paced once, then stopped. You paid. Jed leaned back against the counter. It needed paying. I don't take money like that, she said, not without knowing the cost. There isn't one. She laughed, sharp and short. There's always one. He did not answer. Outside, a wagon passed on the road. Voices carried. Elena caught a word. Woman, then another. Fire. She wrapped her arms around herself. They're talking, she said. They were going to, Jed said. About me. Yes. She waited for more. He did not give it. What are they saying? She asked. That you came from nowhere, he said. That you'll bring trouble. Her mouth twisted. They're not wrong. Jed straightened. They are. She shook her head. You don't know them. I know fear, he said. Silence again. It had weight now. Elena picked up Rosie and moved to the stove, rocking slow. Why do this? She asked. Why me? Jed watched the flame. Because you were there. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. A knock came, hard this time. Jed opened the door to Deputy Nolan Pike, hat in his hands. Afternoon, Nolan said. Sorry to trouble. Jed waited. Sheriff's asking again, Nolan said. About land. About who was living where. Elena's back stiffened. Why? Nolan shifted. Because Silas Crow is. Jed's eyes went cold. Tell him to come himself. Nolan nodded. He already did. The words landed. Elena turned. When? She asked. Town, Nolan said. This morning. Jed closed the door and leaned against it, not looking at her. He owns things, Elena said quietly. If he's asking, it's not about paper. Jed nodded once. I know. Her voice dropped. He came before. To the cabin. Jed turned then. When? Before the fire, she said. He talked about debt. About how I could work it off. Her hand tightened on the blanket. I said no. Jed did not speak. He said fire clears old claims, she went on. I thought it was just talk. Jed's hands curled into fists and then opened again. Outside, boots crunched on the drive. Marta Soto's voice carried, arguing with someone Elena couldn't see. Then Marta came in, cheeks flushed. They're saying things, Marta said, not bothering to lower her voice. That you're staying here. That Jed brought you on purpose. Elena flinched. Jed stepped forward. Enough, he said. Marta looked between them. Silas is leaning on people. On the sheriff. Jed nodded. Thank you. After Marta left, Elena set Rosie down and turned to Jed, eyes bright with anger and fear. This is what I didn't want, she said. You paying, me staying, people thinking. Thinking doesn't make it true, Jed said. It makes it dangerous. He took a step toward her and stopped, leaving space. You can go. She stared. Now you say that? I said it before, he said. You didn't hear it. Her hands shook. I hear it now. She looked at the door, at the latch that still didn't catch, at the snow beyond. If I leave, she said, they'll follow. Yes, Jed said. And if I stay, they'll circle. Her mouth tightened. So either way, I pay. Jed nodded. I will too. The baby stirred. Elena lifted Rosie and pressed her cheek to the small, warm head. I won't be bought, she said. Not by him, not by you. Jed's voice stayed level. Then don't be. She looked at him then, really looked as if searching for the trick. Why are you like this? She asked. He answered before thinking. Because I didn't go back once. The room went still. She did not ask when. She did not ask who. He turned away first. That night, the snow came again. Jed banked the fire and left the door unlatched. Elena watched him do it, every time. Later, when Rosie slept, Elena moved to the counter and placed a small thing there, a bent nail pulled from the ashes, blackened at one end. I found it near the cabin, she said. It's all I have left. Jed picked it up and set it beside the lamp. Keep it. She shook her head. I need you to know I'm not empty-handed. He looked at the nail, then at her. He nodded. In town, a bell rang for evening prayer. Elena bowed her head where she stood. Jed did the same, the words old and steady. I did not ask for this test, but I will not fail it. When they lifted their heads, the house felt changed, as if something unspoken had taken root. Outside, the road carried voices uphill. The town was waking to its hunger. Inside, Rosie slept on, warm and breathing. The debt, whatever its name, had already begun to grow. Sunday came with a thin sun and a hard wind. Snow had crusted overnight and cracked under boots, loud enough to draw eyes. The bell rang once, then again, calling what was left of Ash Creek to stand where everyone could be counted. Jed Mercer rode in early and tied off near the hitch rail. He did not help anyone down. He did not take a seat. He stood where he could see the doors. Elena Reyes came last, Rosie wrapped tight against her chest. She wore the same coat, mended at the elbow with thread that did not match. Heads turned, voices lowered. Someone crossed themselves. Someone smiled without warmth. She took a place along the wall. Jed saw the way her shoulders set, the way she kept the baby's face tucked in, hidden. He did not move closer. He stayed where he was. The service went on. Words about mercy and light and the child laid in a manger. Elena bowed her head and whispered along, the parts she remembered coming back to her in pieces. Jed listened without moving his lips. When the final hymn ended, people stood. That was when Silas Crow stepped into the aisle. He wore his hat indoors. He carried a folded paper in one hand and a smile in the other. He did not rush. "Before folks go," Crow said, voice easy, "there's a small matter." The room stilled. The bell rope swayed once and stopped. Crow turned so everyone could see the paper. "A debt," he said. "Old but not forgotten." Elena's breath caught. Rosie stirred. Crow's eyes found her. "Miss Reyes," he said, drawing the word out. "This concerns you." Jed's jaw tightened. He did not step forward. Crow unfolded the paper and held it up. Ink dark, seal red. "You were living on land you don't own," he said. "You took advances you didn't repay." "I didn't," Elena began. Crow lifted a finger. You did. Here's your mark. He took one step closer. The room leaned in without meaning to. Debt can be settled, Crow said. Work, land, arrangements. Elena's arms locked tighter around Rosie. Her voice came thin. You said no one would know. Crow smiled. Everyone knows now. Jed moved then. He did not touch Crow. He did not raise his voice. There's a child, he said. Crow's eyes slid to him. There's always something. Jed turned to the room. You see a paper. I see a woman who ran from fire with a baby. Murmurs rippled. Someone said Jed's name like a warning. Crow laughed softly. You always did like to stand in front of things, Mercer. Doesn't change the ink. Elena looked at the paper again. Something snagged. The seal sat crooked, pressed too far to the left. The date above it read, wrong. Her chest tightened. That's not, she said, then stopped. Her eyes flicked to the sheriff. Amos Vance stood near the door, arms folded, face unreadable. Sheriff, Crow said, you'll witness. Vance did not answer right away. He cleared his throat. Let's take this outside. Crow shook his head. It belongs where everyone can see. Jed held up a hand, palm out, not to Crow, to Elena. Ma'am, he said, breathe. She did. Once, twice. Rosie whimpered and settled. I won't sign anything, Elena said. Her voice shook but did not break. Not here. Crow's smile thinned. Then the debt stands. Jed stepped into the aisle. He kept his distance. Show me the date. Crow angled the paper. Jed read it. He read it again. That seal's wrong, Jed said quietly. Crow's eyes flickered. Is it? It is, Jed said, pressed after the fact. A murmur rose, sharper now. Vance shifted his weight. We can look at it. Later, Crow said. Now. Elena's hand found the edge of the paper without thinking. She touched the seal and felt the ridge where it shouldn't be. Her mouth went dry. That mark isn't mine, she said. And that date. Crow snapped the paper back. Careful. Jed's voice stayed level. Careful yourself. Reverend Asa Pike stepped forward, hands raised. We'll handle this with order. Crow inclined his head. Of course. Jed turned to Elena. He did not lower his voice. You don't owe him. She shook her head, small. They'll say I do. Let them, Jed said. Crow smiled again. Under whose roof are you staying, Miss Reyes? Elena swallowed. She did not look at Jed. I'm not his. Crow's eyes glittered. Then perhaps you'll work it off elsewhere. Jed's voice cut in. She is under my roof. The room went still. Someone gasped. Crow's smile hardened. Then the debt follows. Jed nodded once. So does the truth. Vance cleared his throat again. This ends now. Crow folded the paper and tucked it away. Not even started, he said. He tipped his hat to Elena. We'll speak again. He turned and walked out. Boots rang on wood. The bell rope swayed. Elena's knees buckled. Jed was there before she fell, not touching, just close enough that she could lean if she chose. She did not. I didn't ask you to say that, she whispered. I know, he said. They'll say things. They already were. Outside, the wind cut sharp. People spilled into the yard in knots, voices rising. Marta Soto caught Elena's sleeve and pressed a roll into her hand. "Eat," Marta said. "Later." Deputy Nolan Pike hovered near the steps, eyes on the ground. "Sheriff," Jed said. Vance met his gaze. "You're making it harder." Jed nodded. "I know." Elena stepped down, Rosie tucked in. She stopped beside Jed. "That seal," she said low. "It's wrong." Jed nodded. "I saw." "They'll come." "Yes." She drew a breath. "I won't sign." He met her eyes. "Good." They walked away together, not touching. The bell rang once more, late. On the ride back, the wind pushed at them from the west. Elena watched the road. Jed watched the ridge. At the gate, Jed dismounted and opened it. He did not latch it. Inside, Elena set Rosie down and leaned her forehead to the wall. "I'm not a thing," she said. Jed stood a pace away. "No." She turned. "They'll try to make me one." "They can try," he said. That afternoon, Dr. Kent came by, face set. "Crow's been around," she said. "So has the sheriff." Elena looked at the baby. "What do I do?" Dr. Kent met Jed's eyes. "You stand." Evening came early again. Jed banked the fire. Elena warmed milk and fed Rosie slow, careful. Jed watched her hands. Outside, the town's talk climbed the hill, thin and hungry. "I should have left before they saw me." Jed bowed his head by the door. He said the words he knew. When he finished, Elena said, "Amen." The paper sat in Crow's pocket. The seal sat wrong, and the debt, whatever its name, had found a crowd. The wind turned after sunset. It came off the ridge with purpose, shouldering snow into the drifts and carrying voices farther than they meant to travel. Jed Mercer latched the barn and walked the fence line once, slow, listening to the dark the way a man listens to a river before crossing. Inside, Elena Reyes sat on the floor beside the stove, Rosie pressed to her chest. The baby slept light, mouth open, breath quick and even. Elena did not look at the door. She watched the fire and counted. A knock came, not at the front, but along the side wall, wood on wood, careful. Jed was there before the second sound. He opened the door a hand's width. Deputy Nolan Pike stood in the snow, hat low. "Sheriff wants a word." "Now?" Jed asked. Nolan's mouth tightened. "Silas does." Jed stepped out and closed the door behind him. "They're saying you're hiding her," Nolan said. "That you brought her in for a reason." Jed waited. "There's talk of a writ," Nolan went on. "About land, about debt." Jed looked past him to the road. "Anything else?" Nolan hesitated. "They're watching." "Who?" Nolan didn't answer. He tipped his hat. "Be careful," he said again, and walked away. Jed stood in the snow until the quiet settled back where it belonged. He did not hurry inside. When he came in, Elena was on her feet. "They're coming," she said. "Not yet," he said. "They will." "Yes." She set Rosie down and wrapped the blanket tight. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. "I'll go." Jed shook his head once. "The road's worse tonight." "I'll walk," she said. "I'll hide. I've done it before." He leaned against the table, keeping space. They'll follow. Then they won't burn your place, she said. He looked at her. This isn't about my place. Her eyes flashed. It's about you paying for me. I'm already paying, he said. For what? She asked. He did not answer right away. He reached for the kettle and set it on the stove. There was a night, he said finally, eyes on the flame, when I didn't go back. Elena went still. Snow came fast, he went on. A beam gave. I thought I had time. He stopped there. He did not say names. He did not say the end. I should have turned sooner. Elena swallowed. I won't be the reason you do that again. You're not, he said. A shadow crossed the window. Then another. Jed moved to the door and set his shoulder against it. Stay back, he said, not to Elena, to the night. A voice called from the yard. Mercer! Silas Crow stepped into the lantern light, coat clean, boots dry. Two men hovered behind him, faces turned away. Evening, Crow said. Cold night? Jed did not answer. Crow's eyes slid past him, found Elena. Miss Reyes, he said. We need to talk. Elena stepped forward before Jed could stop her. She kept Rosie tight and her chin up. You've said what you had to say. Crow smiled. There's more. Jed's voice cut in. Not here. Crow's gaze flicked to him. Under your roof, then. Jed didn't move. You can leave. Crow sighed, as if disappointed. I don't think so. One of the men shifted. Snow crunched close to the door. Jed reached for the lamp and turned it higher, flooding the room with light. He wanted them seen. Ma'am, he said, without looking at Elena. Back. She did not move. Crow's smile thinned. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Elena's voice came steady. I won't sign. Crow stepped forward. Jed stepped too, not touching, just there. There's a child, Jed said. There's always something, Crow said, and nodded. The man on the left lunged. Jed moved. He didn't strike first. He caught the man's wrist and turned it, bone complaining. The other pound grabbed for the doorframe. The lamp swung. The flame guttered. Elena cried out once. Rosie woke screaming. Jed shoved the first man back and kicked the door closed with his heel. Out, he said. Crow raised a hand. Easy. The men retreated a step. Crow watched Jed with a new interest. This isn't finished, Crow said. By morning you'll wish it was. Jed met his eyes. So will you. Crow tipped his hat and backed into the dark. When the yard was empty again, Jed slid the bolt home. Elena's knees gave. She sank to the floor, Rosie wailing against her chest. Jed knelt and turned the baby the way Dr. Kent had shown him, patting slow, steady. The crying broke into hiccups and then breath. Elena covered her mouth. Tears slid through her fingers. I should go, she said into her hands. Tonight. Jed shook his head. No. You don't get to decide, she said, anger breaking through the fear. You do, he said, and I'm telling you what I know. She looked up at him. What? That leaving won't make them stop. Silence took the room again. A thump came from the yard, then a hiss. Smoke crept under the door. Elena screamed. Jed was on his feet. He grabbed a bucket and flung water at the door seam. The hiss sharpened. "They're trying to burn us," Elena said, voice gone small. Jed ran to the window and kicked it out, glass shattering into the snow. He dragged the table across and shoved it against the door. "Back room," he said. "Now!" They moved together. Elena stumbled. Jed caught her elbow and let go at once. In the back room, the air stayed clean. Jed ripped a blanket from the bed and wrapped Rosie tight. "Pray," he said. Elena did not hesitate. She bowed her head and whispered words she had learned as a girl, the old ones that fit in the mouth even when nothing else did. "I will not leave again." The smoke thinned. Snow smothered the fire outside. A voice cursed. Boots ran. Jed waited until the quiet returned. When he opened the door again, the yard was wet and trampled. The fence stood. The house still breathed. Elena sat on the floor, shaking. "It's my fault," she said. "No," Jed said. "They came for me." "They came because they could," he said. "That's on them." She looked at him then, eyes bright with something harder than fear. "I won't run." Jed nodded. "Good." A knock came, careful this time. Dr. Miriam Kent stood in the snow, bag in hand. Marta Soto was behind her, jaw set. "We saw the light," Marta said, "and the smoke." Dr. Kent knelt at once and checked Rosie. "She's fine," she said, shaken, like the rest of us. Elena let out a breath that left her empty. Dr. Kent stood and faced Jed. "This is going to get worse." "I know," he said. Marta crossed her arms. "Town won't sleep on this." Jed nodded again. The women left near midnight. Jed banked the fire and set the chairs back where they belonged. Elena sat by the stove until her shaking slowed. "I'm staying," she said. "If they want me, they'll have to look at me." Jed stood by the door, the bolt heavy in his hand. He did not throw it. "For now," he said. "For now," she agreed. Outside, the wind eased. Snow fell clean, covering tracks as if the night itself wanted mercy. Jed bowed his head and said the words he knew. When he finished, Elena said amen. The hunt had begun. Dawn came wrong. The light was there, but the sound wasn't. No birds, no wind in the cottonwoods, just a thin quiet that pressed against the house like a held breath. Elena Reyes woke with her hand already reaching. The blanket was warm. The space beside it was not empty, but it was wrong. "Rosie," she whispered. The name fell flat. She sat up too fast. Her head swam. The blanket lay folded back, careful. The small shape that should have been there was gone. Her breath hitched once and would not come again. "No," she said, and the word cracked. Jed Mercer was already moving. He had woken on instinct, the same one that dragged him from sleep in winter storms. He crossed the room in 3 strides and saw it at once. The noise was strong. He did not swear. He did not shout. He went still in the way men do right before they break something open. Elena was on her feet, hair loose, bare boots slipping on the floor. She ran for the door. Jed caught her elbow and let go at once. "Ma'am." She tore free. "Don't touch me." She flung the door open and ran into the snow. Jed grabbed his coat and followed. Tracks cut the yard clean and sharp, not hidden, not hurried. Someone wanted them seen, Elena dropped to her knees and pressed her hands into the prints as if she could pull the baby back through the ground. "They took her," she said. Her voice did not rise. It fell inward. Jed knelt beside her and looked at the tracks. 2 sets of boots, 1 horse dragged close, careless, heading south. "Get up," he said, steady. "We're going." She shook her head. I can't leave the house." "You already did," he said. "Now come." She stood on shaking legs and followed him to the barn. Jed saddled fast, hands sure, mind narrow. He lifted Elena up without asking and mounted behind her, giving her space she didn't notice. They rode hard, the trail cut through low brush and over frozen ground. Jed leaned forward and spoke to the mare low and firm. Elena stared ahead, eyes wide, breath coming in thin knives. I should have held her tighter. They found the first sign at the creek, a scrap of cloth snagged on a branch. Elena's mended sleeve, torn clean. Elena slid from the saddle and waded into the water without thinking. The cold took her breath. Jed followed and pulled her back by the shoulders. "Not like this," he said. "Not here." She sagged against him, fists pounding once against his chest. "It's my fault." "No," he said. "I knew," she said. "I knew they would." Jed lifted her back into the saddle. "Then we're not late." They found the men at the tree line. Silas Crow stood a pace back, clean as ever, hands folded. One man held Rosie clumsy, the baby screaming, face red and wet. The sound tore straight through Elena. "Give her back," Elena said, voice gone raw. She slid down and walked forward, hands open. "Please," Crow smiled. "Careful, she's loud." Jed stepped in front of Elena without touching her. "You're done." Crow tilted his head. "Am I?" The man holding Rosie shifted. The baby's cry broke into a cough. Jed moved. He did not draw a weapon. He closed the distance and hit the man's wrist hard enough to break the hold without breaking the bone. Rosie slipped. Jed caught her mid-fall, turned her the right way, tucked her into his coat in one smooth motion. Elena screamed once and ran. The other man lunged. Jed kicked snow into his eyes and drove a shoulder into his chest. The man went down hard and stayed there. Crow stepped back, hands up. "Now, Mercer." Jed did not look at him. He checked Rosie's face, cleared her airway, counted one breath, then another. "She's cold," Elena said, reaching. Jed handed the baby over. Elena crushed Rosie to her chest and rocked, rocking, rocking. Crow watched them with something like annoyance. "You made a mess." Jed stood and turned to him. "You took a child." Crow's smile thinned. "I took leverage." Jed took one step closer. "You ever touch her again?" Crow laughed. "You won't shoot me." Jed did not move. "No." Crow searched his face and found no comfort there. "This isn't over," Crow said, and backed away. "By daylight, you'll be begging for paper." He left his men where they lay and walked into the trees. Elena sank to her knees, Rosie sobbing into her coat. Jed knelt with them, a pace away. "Breathe," he said. "She needs you steady." Elena pressed her forehead to the baby's head. "I've got you," she whispered. "I've got you." They rode back slow. Elena held Rosie tight and did not look back. Jed watched the ridge. At the house, Dr. Miriam Kent was already there, breathless, coat half on. Marta Soto stood behind her, jaw set. "They said a baby," Dr. Kent said, already reaching. "Let me." Elena hesitated, then handed Rosie over. Dr. Kent checked, listened, nodded. "She's cold," she said, "not hurt." Elena slid down the wall and sat on the floor, empty all at once. Jed leaned against the table and closed his eyes for a count of 3. I thought I had learned this lesson. Deputy Nolan Pike arrived near noon, face pale. He took in the scene and looked away. "They crossed a line," Nolan said. "They did before," Jed said. Nolan swallowed. "Sheriff's calling it a misunderstanding." Elena laughed, sharp and broken. "They stole my child." Nolan nodded. "I know." Jed turned to him. "Then decide." Nolan's hands shook. He shoved them into his pockets. "I am." That afternoon, word spread. Quiet at first, then louder. People came up the hill in ones and twos. Some brought food. Some brought nothing but their eyes. Reverend Asa Pike came and stood by the door. "What do you need?" Elena looked up, face streaked. "Justice." The Reverend nodded. "Then you'll have to stand." Elena looked at Rosie, sleeping now, breath steady. She wiped her face with her sleeve and stood. "I will," she said. Jed stepped beside her, not touching. "So will I." That night, Jed bolted the door for the first time. Elena noticed. She did not comment. Before sleep, she knelt by the stove and bowed her head. The words came hard, then easier. "God, I am still here." Jed stood by the door and said his own prayer, shorter, quieter. When he finished, Elena said, "Amen." Outside, the snow covered the tracks again, but the memory did not fade. The Noi was no longer empty, and neither was the fight. By morning, Ash Creek had found its voice. It came up the hill in pieces, wagon wheels on frozen ruts, men calling to one another without names, the bell practicing again, though it wasn't Sunday. Jed Mercer stood at the gate and listened until he could tell who was coming by the sound of their feet. Elena Reyes washed Rosie's face and hands and wrapped her tighter than before. The baby watched her with solemn eyes, as if she had learned something new about the world and was deciding whether to keep it. Dr. Miriam Kent arrived first. She did not knock. She did not smile. "They're drawing up papers," she said. "Silas is." Elena's jaw set. "For what?" "For everything," Dr. Kent said. "Land, labor, custody, if he can say it without choking." Jed leaned a shoulder against the wall. "When?" "By noon," the doctor said. "They'll want it clean." Elena pressed Rosie's cheek to her collarbone. "I won't sign." "I know," Dr. Kent said. "That's why I came." She set a small stack on the table, receipts, notes, a ledger page with a corner torn. "These are pieces," she said. "Not enough alone. Enough together." Jed looked at them without touching. "Where did you get this?" Dr. Kent met his eyes. "From people who don't like being told to look away." She left as quickly as she came. By mid-morning, Deputy Nolan Pike rode in. He dismounted and stood where Jed could see him clear. "They're saying you're harboring her to dodge the law," Nolan said. "They want a signature to settle it." Elena stepped into the doorway, Rosie on her hip. "I won't sign." Nolan swallowed. "I told them." Jed nodded. "And?" "And they said that makes it worse." "Truth often does," Jed said. Nolan glanced at the baby and looked away. Sheriff wants it done at the church. Elena laughed once, humorless. Of course he does. When Nolan left, Marta Soto came up with a basket and stayed this time. She set the basket down and folded her arms. They'll bring witnesses, Marta said. Paid ones. Let them, Elena said. Marta studied her. You're shaking. Elena looked down at her hands and forced them still. I'm not afraid. Marta nodded. Good. Then you're ready. They walked down together. The churchyard was full when they arrived. Not crowded. Just enough people to make sure everyone saw everyone else. Snow squeaked under boots. The door stood open. Silas Crow waited inside. Papers laid neat on a table, ink set, pen clean. Sheriff Amos Vance stood to one side, hat in his hands. Reverend Asa Pike stood to the other, face lined deeper than yesterday. Crow smiled when he saw Elena. Miss Reyes, he said, I hoped you'd come. I didn't, she said. Crow gestured to the table. This doesn't have to be ugly. Elena set Rosie down on a bench and kissed her hair. She stepped forward alone. Jed stayed where he was. Crow slid the paper toward her. Sign, and we're done. Elena looked at it. She did not touch it. She read the date. The seal pressed wrong. The words that tried to make her small. I won't, she said. Crow's smile thinned. You should. No, she said louder. I won't. Murmurs stirred. Sheriff Vance cleared his throat. Miss Reyes, the sheriff said, this is the lawful way. Elena turned to him. You were there, she said. You saw the fire. Vance's eyes flicked to Crow. I saw smoke. Elena nodded. And you smelled money. The room went still. Crow's voice stayed smooth. Careful. Elena faced the crowd. I didn't borrow what he says I did. I didn't sign what he shows you. And I won't give my child to settle a lie. Crow laughed softly. No one said, You did, she said. Every time you came to my door. Jed stepped forward then, not into the aisle, just closer. Show the seal. Crow did not move it. Show it, Jed said again. Reverend Asa Pike raised a hand. We can look. Crow sighed and turned the paper so the seal caught the light. It sat wrong. Anyone who wanted to see could see. Elena felt the room shift. That's not my mark, she said. And that date. Crow snapped the paper back. Enough. Elena's hands curled. She took a breath and steadied it. I won't sign, she said again. Not today. Not ever. Crow's eyes hardened. Then you leave. Elena turned her head, slow, and looked at Jed. He met her gaze. He did not nod. He did not shake his head. Where would I go? She asked the room. No one answered. Jed spoke. She stays. Crow smiled, sharp. Under your roof? Yes, Jed said. Crow leaned in. Then the debt follows. Jed nodded. So does the truth. Sheriff Vance rubbed his jaw. We'll adjourn. No, Crow said. We'll finish. Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out the bent nail, blackened at one end. She held it up. This came from my cabin, she said, from a beam that burned before the rest. Ask anyone who's worked wood what that means. A few heads lifted. A few eyes narrowed. Crow's voice cut hard. Put that away. Elena did not. Fire clears old claims, she said, repeating his words back to him. That's what you told me. The Reverend inhaled. Is that so? Crow's smile vanished. This is a farce. Elena turned to the bench and lifted Rosie again. She held her where everyone could see. I won't trade her, she said. Not for land, not for work, not for your peace. The room breathed. Jed stood beside her now, close enough that his sleeve brushed hers. He did not touch her. Ma'am, he said low, we can go. Elena nodded. We will. They walked out together, not fast, not slow. The door closed behind them with a sound that carried. Outside, the wind cut clean. People parted without speaking. At the gate, Elena stopped. Her hands shook again, then steadied. I meant what I said, she told Jed. I won't sign. I know, he said. They'll come again. Yes, she looked up at him. Then I'll stand again. He nodded once. Back at the ranch, Jed barred the door and then took the bar down again. Elena noticed. I won't run, she said. I know, he said. That afternoon, Nolan Pike rode up with his hat in his hands. Sheriff's furious, he said. Crow's worse. Elena met his eyes. Good. Nolan's mouth twitched. I brought copies, he said, and handed Dr. Kent's ledger page to Jed. Didn't want it lost. Jed took it and nodded. Thank you. Nolan hesitated. If it comes to it. Jed shook his head. It will. Evening came. Elena fed Rosie slow, careful. Jed set the table and stepped back. They ate in quiet. When the baby slept, Elena stood by the stove and bowed her head. Lord, she whispered, I don't know how to be brave. Help me anyway. Jed stood by the door, hat in his hands. His prayer was shorter. I won't look away. Outside, the road carried boots again, farther off this time. The town was choosing its shape. Inside, the pen lay unused. The paper stayed blank. Elena had not signed, and she would not. They came at noon. Not all at once. Not loud. One wagon at a time. One rider, then another. Ash Creek learned to gather without being told. By the time the bell rang, the yard was full enough to make a shape. Elena Reyes stood at the edge of it with Rosie on her hip. She had tied her hair back and mended the tear in her sleeve. The stitch showed. She did not hide it. Jed Mercer stood a step behind her. He kept his hat in his hands. He did not look for Silas Crow. He waited for the sound that meant Crow had decided the room belonged to him. It came. Boots on plank. The scrape of a chair pulled back without asking. Paper laid flat. Crow set his hat on the table and spread the documents like cards. Let's finish, he said. People have work to do. Sheriff Amos Vance stood to one side, jaw tight. Deputy Nolan Pike hovered near the door, eyes moving, not settling. Reverend Asa Pike cleared his throat. We'll hear it clean. Crow smiled. That's all I want. He turned to Elena. Miss Reyes, one mark. Elena did not move. She shifted Rosie higher, and stepped forward alone. "I will speak," she said. Crow's smile faltered. "That isn't necessary." "It is," Elena said. Her voice carried. She did not raise it. She faced the crowd. "You saw the fire. You saw me run. You saw me with my child and nothing else." A murmur answered her, not agreement, not refusal, recognition. "This paper says I borrowed money," she went on. "It says I agreed to work it off. It says I signed." She turned the page toward the light and tapped the seal. "That seal is wrong." Crow reached for it. Jed stepped closer, not between them, just close enough that Crow noticed. "Show it," Jed said. Crow snapped his hand back. "Later." Elena looked to the sheriff. "You've stamped papers before," she said. "You know where a seal sits when it's true." Vance's eyes flicked to the page. He said nothing. Elena reached into her pocket and brought out the bent nail. She held it up. "This came from my cabin, from a beam that burned before the rest." A few men shifted. Someone nodded, slow. "Fire clears old claims," Elena said, repeating Crow's words, letting them hang where everyone could hear. "That's what you told me." Crow's face hardened. "You're twisting." Elena shook her head. "You said it." Reverend Pike inhaled. "Did you?" Crow laughed once, sharp. "We're not trying a sermon." Jed spoke then, not loud. "Look at the date." Crow's hand tightened on the paper. "Enough." Deputy Nolan Pike stepped forward. His hands shook. "Sheriff," he said, "may I?" Vance stared at him. "What is it, Nolan?" Nolan swallowed. "There's a ledger." Crow's head snapped around. "Sit down." Nolan didn't. "From the doctor's office," he said. "Payments, cash, no names, dates that line up with fires." Crow moved fast. Jed moved faster. He didn't touch Crow. He set himself between Crow and Nolan, palms open. "Say it," Jed said. Nolan drew a breath. "I checked the seal," he said. "It's pressed after the ink dried. That makes it false." The yard breathed in as one. Vance's face went pale. "That's a serious charge." "It is," Nolan said. "And there's more." Crow lunged for the papers. Jed caught his wrist and held it, firm, not breaking. The room froze. "Let go," Crow hissed. Jed did not. "Step back." Crow looked around and saw what he hadn't before. Not anger, attention. He stepped back. Nolan continued. "There were men seen near the ridge the night the fire jumped. With oil, with rags." Someone swore. Elena felt her knees weaken and steadied herself against the bench. Rosie stirred and settled. Vance rubbed his face. "Why wasn't this brought sooner?" Nolan met his eyes. "Because it wasn't welcome." The silence that followed was heavier than noise. Reverend Pike raised his hands. "This is no small thing." Crow scoffed. "You're letting her spin a tale." Elena stepped forward again. "I am done being quiet." Crow pointed at her. "You owe me." Elena shook her head. "You tried to take my child." A ripple moved through the crowd, sharp this time. Jed turned to Crow. "You crossed a line." Crow's smile returned, thin and dangerous. "You think you can stop me?" Jed answered without heat. "Yes." Vance cleared his throat. "We'll adjourn." "No," Crow said. "We'll finish." Vance's voice rose. I said adjourn. Crow stared at him, surprised. You'll hand over those papers, Vance said, and held out his hand. Crow laughed. Or what? Vance's hand did not waver. Or I take them. Crow looked at the crowd and saw what had changed. He slapped the papers down and stepped back. Keep them, he said. You'll beg for them soon enough. He turned and walked out. The bell rope swayed. Elena sagged against the bench. Jed was there, not touching, close enough that she could lean if she chose. She did not. I did it, she whispered. Yes, Jed said. Deputy Nolan Pike let out a breath that shook him. I'll testify, he said, if it comes to it. Reverend Pike nodded. It will. Vance stared at the papers as if they had bitten him. We'll investigate. Elena looked at him. You should have already. He flinched. Outside, the yard broke into low voices. Some angry, some relieved, some afraid. Jed and Elena walked out together. Not fast, not slow. At the gate, Elena stopped. Her hands shook again, then steadied. They'll come again, she said. Yes, Jed said, but not like before. No. She looked down at Rosie and smiled, small and fierce. I stood. Jed nodded. You did. Back at the ranch, Jed set the papers on the table and did not touch them again. That evening, Dr. Miriam Kent arrived with her, coat half on and her eyes bright. It started, she said. It has, Jed agreed. Elena fed Rosie and sang a line of a hymn she remembered crooked. Jed stood by the door and listened. I didn't know if my voice would hold. Outside, Ash Creek argued with itself. Inside, the fire burned steady. The day had named its truth, and the truth had not burned. The truth did not arrive all at once. It seeped. By the second morning after the gathering, Ash Creek smelled different. Not like smoke, like fear that had lost its edge. Men spoke lower. Doors closed slower. People looked at the ground before they looked at each other. Jed Mercer stood at the corral and watched it happen from a distance. He fixed a hinge that did not need fixing and waited for the sound of hooves that would mean the choice had finally been made. Elena Reyes stayed close to the house. Rosie slept better now, longer stretches, breath deep and sure. Elena took that as a mercy and did not ask for more. She cleaned, warmed water, folded the quilt that still smelled faintly of ash. A rider came up the drive before noon. Deputy Nolan Pike dismounted hard, as if the ground had offended him. His hat was in his hands again. It shook. Sheriff's office, he said. Now. Jed wiped his hands and nodded. Elena looked up from the stove. I'll come, she said. Nolan hesitated. He asked for Mercer. Jed met Elena's eyes. He did not speak. He did not stop her. They rode down together. The office was full when they arrived. Sheriff Amos Vance stood behind the desk. Dr. Miriam Kent leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Reverend Asa Pike sat with his hands folded, head bowed. The papers lay on the desk, spread wider now, corners weighted. Close the door, Vance said. Jed did. The latch caught. Vance cleared his throat. Deputy Pike has made a statement. Nolan swallowed. I did. Say it again, Vance said. Nolan looked at the floor, then lifted his eyes. "The seal on Crow's paper is false," he said. "Pressed after the ink dried. I checked 3 others, same hand, same pressure." Dr. Kent nodded once. Vance rubbed his jaw. "That's forgery." "Yes, sir." "And the fire?" Nolan's breath hitched. "I spoke to 2 men who were near the ridge. They were paid to clear brush. They carried oil." Elena's hands curled in her lap. Jed did not move. "By whom?" Vance asked. Nolan hesitated. "By a foreman tied to Crow's mill." The room went still. Vance looked at Dr. Kent. "You had ledger entries." She pushed off the wall and stepped forward. "Cash payments," she said. "No names. Dates that matched the fires. I didn't know what I was seeing until now." Vance's face paled. "Why didn't you bring this sooner?" Dr. Kent's voice stayed level. "Because no one asked who would be hurt." Silence again. Reverend Pike spoke softly. "The law has been asleep." Vance flinched. "Watch it." Reverend Pike lifted his eyes. "Wake it then." Vance straightened. "This becomes a case." Nolan exhaled hard. "Yes, sir." Elena stood. Her knees shook. She steadied them. "I want to speak," she said. Vance looked at Jed. Jed did not nod. "Go on," Vance said. Elena faced the room. "He came to my cabin before the fire," she said. "He talked about debt, about how a woman could settle it if she was willing." Vance's jaw tightened. "He said fire clears old claims," Elena went on. "He said it like a promise." Jed felt something crack behind his ribs. "That wasn't the first time," Elena said. "Just the first time I listened." Nolan's hands shook again. "Sheriff," he said, "there's more." Vance closed his eyes. "Say it." Nolan took a breath. "There was another fire, years back, near the North Draw." Jed's head came up. "A beam gave in a storm," Nolan said. "A family didn't make it out." The room blurred. Jed's voice came out wrong. "Say that again." Nolan swallowed. "The night watch was light. The report says accident. But the payment ledger shows cash 2 days prior. Same foreman." Elena felt the air leave the room. Jed did not move. He did not speak. I knew this sound. Vance stood. His chair scraped back. "Get Crow," he said. A shout rose outside, then another. Boots pounded past the window. Silas Crow burst through the door, coat thrown over one shoulder, eyes bright with a dangerous calm. "What's this?" Crow said. "A meeting without me?" Vance faced him. "Sit." Crow laughed. "You don't order me." Nolan stepped forward, hands visible. "You're named in a forgery and arson." Crow's smile thinned. "By whom?" "By the truth," Reverend Pike said. Crow's eyes slid to Jed. "You brought your trouble with you." Jed's hands clenched once, then opened. "You burned her cabin." Crow shrugged. "Fire is an old tool." "And mine?" Jed said. Crow paused. "Just a fraction." Elena felt it. She saw it. The room saw it. "You don't know what you're saying," Crow said. Jed took one step forward. "Say their names." Crow's eyes flicked to the door. Nolan moved. Vance moved. Crow bolted. Jed did not chase. He stood where he was as the office exploded into motion. Shouts, boots, the scrape of furniture. Through it all, the truth stood, bare and smoking. Elena crossed the room and stopped a pace from Jed. She did not touch him. "I'm sorry," she said. He shook his head once. "Don't." Outside, a shot cracked, then another. People screamed. The sound ran through the town like a lit fuse. Crow stumbled back into the doorway, wild-eyed, blood on his sleeve. He grabbed Elena without warning, arm locked around her shoulders, a knife flashing. The room froze. "Let her go," Jed said. Crow laughed, breathless. "You won't." Jed did not raise his voice. "You're done." Crow pressed the blade closer. Elena did not scream. She lifted her chin and met Jed's eyes. "Don't," she said. Jed took one slow step forward, then another. "I lost them because I waited," he said, quiet. "I won't again." Crow's grip tightened. "I'll cut her." Jed stopped. He closed his eyes for half a second. Then he moved. Not toward Crow, but to the side. He grabbed the lamp and smashed it against the wall. Flame burst. Smoke bloomed. Crow cursed and flinched. Elena wrenched free. Nolan tackled Crow from behind. The knife clattered. Vance was there, shouting orders that finally stuck. When it was over, Crow lay on the floor, cuffed, bleeding, staring at the ceiling like it had betrayed him. The lamp burned out. Smoke thinned. Elena sank into a chair, shaking. Jed stood where he was and bowed his head. I did not wait. Vance wiped his face. "He's under arrest," he said, "for arson, for forgery, for kidnapping." Reverend Pike crossed himself. Dr. Kent knelt by Elena. "You're safe," she said. Elena nodded once, unable to speak. Crow was dragged out, cursing, his voice fading down the street. Outside, the town stood stunned. Some cried, some cheered, some simply watched, the shape of their world changing in front of them. Jed stepped outside into the cold. Snow fell clean and quiet, covering the mess. Elena joined him, Rosie bundled against her chest. "He won't come back," she said. "No," Jed said, "but the damage will." She looked at him. "We'll stand." He nodded. Together. The bell rang once, late and uncertain. Ash Creek had seen the truth catch fire. And this time, it had not been allowed to spread. They kept him in the holding room at the back, the one with the small window that never opened all the way. The air smelled of iron and lamp oil. Silas Crow sat on the bench with his wrists cuffed, blood drying dark on his sleeve. Smile gone but not replaced with fear. Not yet. Jed Mercer stood in the doorway and did not step inside. Sheriff Amos Vance finished barking orders and turned, tired all at once. "We'll move him at dusk," he said. "Safer." Jed nodded. "I'll wait." Vance studied him. "You don't have to." "I know." Elena Reyes sat on a chair by the wall, Rosie asleep against her shoulder. Dr. Miriam Kent pressed a clean cloth into Elena's hand and checked the baby again. "She's fine," she whispered. "You're the one shaking." Elena nodded and breathed until her hands slowed. Crow laughed softly from the bench. "He always was stubborn," he said, eyes on Jed. Cost him before. Jed did not answer. Crow leaned forward as far as the cuffs allowed. You think you won today? Jed looked at him then. You lost. Crow smiled thin. Not everything. The door creaked. Deputy Nolan Pike stepped in, hat low. He met Jed's eyes and hesitated. Sheriff wants you outside. Jed followed him into the cold hallway. They found another ledger, Nolan said, voice tight. Names this time. Places. Jed nodded. Good. Nolan swallowed. There's something else. Jed waited. The North Draw fire, Nolan said. The report, it was changed. Before I ever saw it. Jed's chest tightened. By whom? Nolan looked away. By the sheriff. Jed closed his eyes for a count of 3. Inside the holding room, Crow began to sing, low, tuneless, a thing meant to needle. Elena stood. I want him to stop. Jed turned back toward the room. Nolan caught his sleeve. Don't. Jed shook him off gently. I won't. He stepped inside. Crow stopped singing and grinned. Come to finish it? Jed stayed where he was. Say their names. Crow laughed. Still think words will save you. Jed's voice stayed level. Say them. Crow tilted his head. Your wife's name, he said, soft. Your boys. Elena's breath caught behind Jed. Crow watched for the flinch and found it. He smiled wider. You waited, he said. I didn't. The room went quiet enough to hear the baby's breath. Jed took one step closer. His hands shook and then stilled. I could end it. Crow leaned back, satisfied. Go on. Jed stopped. He looked at Crow the way a man looks at a storm he has learned will pass if he lets it. You don't get to make me, he said. Crow's smile faltered. You think this is mercy? No, Jed said. It's restraint. Crow scoffed. Pretty word. Jed nodded once. Hard one. Sheriff Vance appeared in the doorway, pale. That's enough. Jed turned to him. You changed the report, Vance's mouth opened, closed. I did what I thought. You hid a crime, Jed said. Vance looked at Elena and then at the floor. I was wrong. Jed studied him a moment longer and then stepped back. Then do the right thing now. Vance nodded, small. I will. Crow laughed again, sharp and bitter. You're all fools. Nolan moved forward. Take him, he said to the men at the door. They pulled Crow to his feet. He twisted once and shouted over his shoulder, This town will eat you alive! Jed did not answer. Outside, dusk gathered. Snow began again, clean and quiet. The wagon waited with chains and a canvas cover. Crow was loaded in without ceremony. The wheels creaked as they turned. Elena stood with Rosie bundled tight, watching until the wagon disappeared down the road. Her legs trembled. Jed stood beside her, not touching. It's done, she said. He shook his head. Not all of it. She looked up at him. But him. Yes, he said. Him. They walked back up the hill together. People stepped aside, some nodding. some unable to meet their eyes. Marta Soto pressed bread into Elena's hands without speaking. Reverend Asa Pike tipped his hat and said, "The truth costs. You paid it." Elena nodded. "We're not finished." At the ranch, the fire burned low and steady. Jed banked it and set the kettle on. Elena fed Rosie slow and careful. The baby's fingers curled around Elena's shirt, as if she had learned something important and would not let it go. Jed stood at the door and listened to the quiet. "You could have," Elena said, soft. He knew what she meant. "Yes," he said. She swallowed. "Why didn't you?" He thought of the north draw, of the beam, of the sound a roof makes when it gives. "Because killing him wouldn't bring them back," he said, "and it would take something from me I won't give." Elena nodded, tears bright. "You chose us." He met her eyes. "I chose right." Later, Dr. Kent returned with news. "The sheriff's stepping aside," she said. "An inquiry's been called. Nolan will testify." Nolan himself came after, standing awkward in the doorway. "I'll see it through," he said. "Whatever it costs." Jed nodded. "Good." Night settled in full. Elena laid Rosie down and watched her sleep. Jed unlatched the door and then latched it again, deliberate this time. Elena noticed. "You don't have to," she said. "I want to," he said. She came to stand beside him. They bowed their heads together. "Lord," Elena whispered, "teach me how to keep standing." Jed's prayer followed, quiet. "Teach me how to let the past stay there." They lifted their heads. Outside, the road was empty. Inside, the house breathed. Elena reached out and took Jed's hand. She did not hold it long, just enough. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "You're welcome." The night passed without voices, without fire. For the first time, since the ridge burned, the darkness did not feel like a threat, and the choice that mattered most had already been made. Spring came without asking permission. It did not erase the burn marks on the ridge. It did not mend the places where boards had been replaced with different wood. It came anyway, muddy boots, swollen creek, a thin green that pushed through where ash had settled and stayed. Jed Mercer hung the new door himself. He worked slow, measuring twice, shaving the edge until it fit without force. The old latch lay on the bench, warped and blackened, kept for no reason he could name. When the hinges were set, he tested the swing. It opened clean. It closed clean. He did not lock it. Elena Reyes watched from the table, Rosie on her hip, the baby heavier now, steadier. She had learned the weight of mornings here. The kettle first, the window cracked, the way Jed checked the yard without thinking about it. "Does it stick?" she asked. "No," Jed said. "It listens." She smiled at that and looked back to the child. Rosie gurgled and reached for the light on the floor. The inquiry moved through Ash Creek like a slow river. Sheriff Amos Vance stepped aside. Papers changed hands. Deputy Nolan Pike took statements and did not rush them. Men who had kept quiet spoke once, then twice. Some did not sleep after. Silas Crow did not return. The mill shut for a week and reopened under different names. The ledger found its way to a judge who read without blinking. The town learned what it had been willing not to see. On a Sunday with no bell, Reverend Asa Pike walked up the hill and stood at the gate, hat in his hands. "I came to ask," he said, "not to tell." Jed nodded. "Good." Reverend Pike looked at Elena. "We'll mark the land clear. No claims, no debts." Elena set Rosie down and stood. "Thank you." He tipped his hat. "You stood when it mattered." After he left, Elena sat again and let out a breath that had been waiting a long time. "I thought relief would be louder," she said. Jed shook his head. "It's usually quiet." They worked together that afternoon without talking much. Jed fixed a rail. Elena mended a shirt. Rosie slept between them, a small, sure warmth. I didn't know peace could feel like this. At dusk, Marta Soto came with a basket and stayed to eat. She laughed once, easy, like she had been saving it. Dr. Miriam Kent followed, coat thrown over her arm, eyes bright with a tired satisfaction. "Her lungs are strong," the doctor said, listening to Rosie and smiling. "So are yours." Elena nodded. "They had to be." When the women left, the sky held a soft blue that promised frost would come again and be met. Jed carried the old latch to the door and set it beside the new one. Elena watched him. "You're keeping it." "For now," he said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the bent nail, still black at one end. She set it beside the latch. "For now," she echoed. He nodded. Night came gentle. Jed set the kettle on and stepped back. Elena poured, careful not to spill. They drank without. "Hurry." "I won't stay because I owe you," Elena said, not looking at him. "I know," Jed said. "I'll stay because I choose to," she said. He met her eyes. "So will I." He reached into his coat and brought out a small thing, a new key, bright, the teeth sharp and true. He held it out, not touching her hand. "It's for the door," he said. "You decide when." Elena took it. She turned it once in her fingers and felt the weight of it settle. "I decide," she said. "Yes," Jed said. She crossed the room and hung the key on a nail by the door, beside the old latch and the blackened nail. She stepped back and looked at the three of them together. "That feels right," she said. Jed watched her face and saw no fear there. Not none. Just not enough to stop her. They bowed their heads, the words coming easy now. "Thank you," Elena whispered. Jed's prayer followed, simple. "Keep us." Later, when Rosie slept, Elena stood in the doorway and breathed the night. Jed joined her, a step away. "You could leave," he said, because the words still mattered. She shook her head. "I could. I won't." He nodded. "Good." She reached for his hand this time and did not let go right away. He did not either. Outside, the creek talked to itself. Somewhere, a fence creaked and settled. The ridge held its scars and its green. Inside, the house learned a new sound, the quiet of belonging. Elena lifted the key from the nail and pressed it into Jed's palm. "Tomorrow," she said. He closed his fingers around it and smiled, small and true. Tomorrow came, and this time, they met it together. As spring settled over Blackbird Ridge, nothing looked perfect, and that was the miracle of it. The scars on the land remained, The old latch still hung beside the new key, and memories did not vanish just because justice finally spoke. But inside that small house, a child slept without fear. A woman stood where she chose to stand, and a man who had once believed he was too late learned that some doors open only after patience. This was never a story about fire or debt or even cruelty. It was a story about choosing decency when the world grows loud, about holding to faith when answers come slowly, and about finding family not by blood alone, but by standing together when it costs something to do so. Healing, like the seasons, arrives in its own time. If this story touched a memory in you, or reminded you of a moment when kindness mattered more than strength, please share your thoughts below. We read every comment, and your words keep these stories alive. If you enjoyed this journey, tap the like button, subscribe for more Western love tales, and tell us, what city are you watching from today? Thank you for listening. Your time means more than you know.